Parents made me pay $40,000 by pretending it was for my dad's medical emergency, but they were using it to pay off debt created by my brother's gambling. They said, "Your good quality is that you don't doubt things." I called the police, but when they found out what else I did, it was too late. At the open office on the 42nd floor of Tech Future Incorporated, Jody Williams was engrossed in the final review of the quarterly earnings presentation materials. At the age of 35, she had built a solid reputation in this industry. After joining the company as a new employee, she had worked her way up to middle management over 5 years. Can you review these Q3 sales forecasts again? It seems there's a slight discrepancy with the figures from the marketing department. Rebecca Lee, her colleague, brought some documents to her desk. As a typical Silicon Valley engineer, Rebecca always demanded accuracy. "Oh, that. I actually noticed it earlier, and I'm working on a revised version now." Jody began explaining, pointing to the rows of numbers displayed on her screen. Numbers were her strong suit. They were objective and unaffected by emotions. Unlike family relationships, her colleagues highly valued her professionalism, but none of them noticed the deep wounds she carried. Late that afternoon when her phone rang, the calm of her day was shattered. The name, Mom, displayed on the screen made Jody hesitate for a moment. Her last conversation with her mother had been 3 months ago during Thanksgiving. Even then, her mother couldn't recall the name of the company Jody worked for. This was despite her having worked there for 5 years, and having told her mother its name countless times. "It's Tech Future, Mom. Half of the apps on your smartphone use our company's technology." Even after explaining this, her mother's eyes had already drifted in another direction. "Hey," Austin said. And just like that, the conversation shifted immediately to her brother. Her parents had always shown little interest in Jody. Her younger brother Austin, 8 years younger than her, was always the center of their parents' affection, leaving Jody to live her life feeling perpetually lonely. To her parents, Jody was the perfect child, someone they could afford to ignore. "Mom," Jody cautiously answered the call. "Jody, how are you? Are you still working at that big company? Are you eating properly?" Her mother's voice was unnaturally cheerful. Something was off. Jody instinctively felt it. Her mother rarely showed any interest in her life. "What's going on?" Jody asked directly. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Then her mother began speaking in a tearful voice. "It's about your father. He needs knee surgery, and the insurance won't cover it. We need $40,000. An alarm went off in Jody's mind. Her father had worked in the insurance industry for over 30 years. There was no way he wouldn't have proper medical coverage. And $40,000 for knee surgery? The number seemed oddly specific. "Do you have the doctor's diagnosis? Have you negotiated with the insurance company?" Jody calmly asked a series of questions. It was a skill she excelled at in her job, the ability to spot irregularities in numbers, but her mother began to sound increasingly irritated. "That's not the point. Your father is suffering. Are you going to abandon your family?" "Ah, here we go again." The usual emotional appeal. Her mother's typical tactic of instilling guilt. Jody knew that once it reached this point, the conversation would go nowhere. She sighed and reluctantly decided to give in to the demand. "Fine. I'll transfer the money to your account, but please pay it back, even if it's little by little. $40,000 is a lot of money for me too." "Jody, thank you. I promise I'll pay you back." Her mother's voice brightened immediately. It was as if she had been confident of this outcome all along. 17 years had passed since Jody left home at 18. Yet it seemed she was still not entirely free from the weight of her family's expectations. When Jody got home, she sank deep into her sofa. $40,000. It was almost the amount she had saved over the course of a year. She had carefully set it aside as a down payment for a house. She had planned meticulously, avoided unnecessary spending, and funneled all her overtime pay into savings. All of it was about to crumble because of one phone call. But what unsettled her more than the money was her mother's attitude. The sudden shift from her usual coldness to a tone of pleading sweetness, and the way she avoided providing any details. Something was clearly wrong. That night, Jody couldn't sleep. Lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, memories from the past came flooding back. Jody's family was far from wealthy, and they had lived a modest life. Her father worked at an insurance company, but his salary was low, and her mother worked part-time. Jody clearly remembered an event from when she was 16. It was the day she got a B+ on her chemistry test. It was the second-best score in the class. She returned home proudly, but her parents' reaction was cold. "Why couldn't you try harder?" Her mother's voice was as cold as ice. "You need to set an example for your brother. You must be first." That was just one example. Her parents constantly demanded perfection from Jody. Get into a good college, be a model student, and above all, be a good example for her brother. On the other hand, completely different standards were applied to her younger brother Austin. Even when he stole money from their father's wallet, her parents were forgiving. "Well, He's a kid. All kids go through this phase. They laughed it off. The unequal treatment became even more obvious in high school. Jody was busy from morning till night. She worked part-time at a coffee shop, volunteered at the library, and maintained excellent grades in AP classes. All of it was to get into college and become independent. Meanwhile, Austin skipped classes and immersed himself in video games in the basement. Her parents never scolded him, instead continuing to say, "We're just waiting for his talent to bloom." It was as if a lazy lifestyle was somehow a sign of exceptional talent. During her college years, Jody's life became even more grueling. In the mornings, she worked part-time at a coffee shop. In the evenings, she took on shifts as a waitress at a restaurant. She squeezed work into the gaps between her classes and tackled her assignments late at night. Her sleep was consistently less than 5 hours. Meanwhile, her brother Austin continued to live at home under the protection of their parents, pursuing what he called finding himself. All of his living expenses were covered by their parents, and no one ever questioned his future. Austin enrolled in a community college, but dropped out after just one semester. "It's too stressful," he claimed as his excuse. Their parents accepted this without objection and continued to support him financially for 5 years, under the guise of his self-discovery. On the other hand, Jody left home at the age of 18 because of her father's words. "If you're going to live here, you'll pay rent. If you don't like that, then leave." Forced out of the house, Jody worked tirelessly to earn enough for rent and living expenses. However, her parents never demanded a single dollar from Austin, who was still living at home at 25. On the contrary, they continued to fully support his lifestyle. This blatant inequality left deep emotional scars on Jody, but at the same time, it made her stronger. She resolved to carve out her life entirely on her own, relying on no one else. After graduating from college, she moved to Silicon Valley and began a new chapter of her life at Tech Future Incorporated. Her colleagues who had known Jody since she joined the company witnessed her remarkable growth. As a new employee, she was always the first to arrive at the office and the last to leave. She would eat her lunch quickly at her desk and stay entirely focused on her work. Her dedication bore fruit, and she steadily built her career. In her second year at the company, Jody was promoted to team leader. By her fourth year, she became a department manager, and in her fifth year, she earned the position of deputy director. Her analytical skills and decisiveness won the trust of her superiors. Jody's only confidant was her colleague Rebecca Lee. The two were the same age and had grown up in similarly challenging family environments, which allowed Rebecca to instinctively understand Jody's struggles. When Jody confided in her, Rebecca tilted her head and said, "Something doesn't add up. Your father worked at an insurance company, right? So why wouldn't insurance cover the surgery? And $40,000 for a knee surgery, that sounds way too high." Those words awakened Jody's investigative instincts. Her intuition, honed by years of experience as a financial analyst, was warning her that something was off. First, she called her father's workplace. When she asked the HR department to confirm his employment status, an unexpected truth emerged. Her father had taken early retirement 3 years ago. Moreover, he had withdrawn most of his retirement payout in a lump sum. "That's unusual." The HR representative said, "Typically, we recommend receiving retirement benefits in installments." Next, Jody contacted her mother's former part-time workplace. She learned that her mother had abruptly quit 2 years ago, citing health issues. But as far as Jody knew, her mother was perfectly healthy. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together. Her parents' early retirements, the lump sum withdrawal of retirement funds, and now, the sudden demand for $40,000. Everything about it seemed unnatural. At that moment, decisive information came to light. It was an email from her father's sister, Matilda. "Jody, there's something I need to tell you." The tone of the email felt urgent. "Austin is in deep debt, gambling. There's a rumor he's lost over $400,000 at the casino. Your parents are desperately trying to hide it, but I felt I had to let you know." Jody stared at the screen, speechless. The $40,000 her mother had requested. It wasn't for surgery. It was likely to pay off part of Austin's gambling debt. Her parents' retirement funds had probably been used for the same purpose. A wave of anger and sadness washed over her. But more than anything, Jody felt exhausted by the endless negotiations and struggles with her family. Even after leaving home at 18, she had always lived in fear of her family's shadow. This incident was proof that her fears had been justified. Further investigation revealed more details about the situation. Austin had been immersed in online gambling for 5 years. He had started with small bets, which escalated over time. He accumulated debt, then borrowed more to repay the previous loans, creating a vicious cycle. Her parents had been lying constantly to protect him. To relatives and friends, they claimed, Austin is working as a consultant at an IT company, desperately concealing his gambling addiction. Their retirement funds had been drained to pay off his debts. And now, their last hope was Jody's savings. The wealth she had painstakingly built through her efforts was on the verge of being sacrificed to fuel her brother's insatiable desires. Just as Jody was delving deeper into the situation, she received a notification from the bank. It was a busy weekday morning, right before her commute. An unauthorized access attempt was detected on your account. At first, Jody thought it was just another one of those common suspicious access notifications, but the conversation with the bank security officer completely changed the situation. This was quite an organized attempt, the officer explained. The perpetrators had detailed knowledge of the account holder's personal information, date of birth, previous addresses, and even answers to security questions. A chill ran down Jody's spine. The only people who knew such information were her family. Can the IP address be traced? Jody asked, trying to remain composed. Yes. The access primarily originated from a specific area in the suburbs of Boston. Specifically, it was her parents' address. There was no doubt about it. The access had come from her parents' home. I strongly recommend reporting this to the police, the security officer said, carefully choosing their words. This is clearly an attempt at unauthorized access. Even if it involves family, legal action may be necessary. Jody took a deep breath. This wasn't just a financial issue. It was a complete breakdown of trust. For 18 years, she had worked tirelessly to build an independent life, only for her family to try and destroy it in an instant. She took immediate action. First, she completely froze the compromised account. Then, she opened a new account at a different bank and transferred all her assets. She changed all her passwords and PINs and enabled two-factor authentication. Additionally, she lowered the credit limit on her credit cards. Next, she strengthened the security system at her home. She installed surveillance cameras and replaced all the locks. These measures were taken in anticipation of the possibility that her family might show up unannounced. Then came the most difficult decision of all. She decided to report the incident to the police. This is a justified act of self-defense. Jody told herself, I have the right to protect my own life. Hours after reporting to the police, the expected reactions from her family began to pour in. First, there was a voice message from her mother. How could you betray your own family and involve the police? You've grown into such a selfish child. After everything we've done for you, isn't this the least you could do in return? Stop being so selfish. Her mother's voice was filled with anger and reproach, but beneath it, Jody recognized the manipulative tone she had come to know so well. As always, her mother was trying to instill guilt. Next came an email from her father. I never thought you'd stoop this low, exposing your family's shame to the outside world. Are you satisfied now? Is this how you repay us for everything we've done for you? Finally, there was a relentless stream of messages from Austin. Why are you doing this to me? Do you want to ruin me? This is the end of my life now. Is that what you wanted? None of the messages showed any sign of remorse. They failed to grasp the gravity of their actions. Instead, they blamed Jody for not meeting their expectations. Jody spread out records from the past 5 years across her dining table. Her experience as a financial analyst was now her greatest ally. Let's start by organizing everything chronologically, she said aloud. It was a habit she often relied on during complex financial analyses. Records of her mother's financial demands. They had started with small amounts and gradually escalated: textbook fees for Austin, unexpected medical expenses, car repair costs. All of it had turned out to be lies. She also organized the audio recordings. She had recorded every recent conversation, the threatening words from her parents, Austin's vague explanations, and their many contradictory statements. The records from the bank served as decisive evidence. There had been 27 unauthorized access attempts, all originating from her parents' home IP address. The times were concentrated between late at night and early morning. They had deliberately targeted times when Jody would likely be unaware. And then there's the online casino records, she said, picking up the documents detailing Austin's gambling history, invoices from casino operators, threatening emails from debt collectors, deposit records that matched the dates when her parents' retirement funds were withdrawn. The most shocking evidence, however, was the email correspondence with relatives. Jody grew up to be such a cold child. She keeps betraying our expectations. Austin is the real pride of our family. These emails expose the lies her family had spread to others over the years. Jody began compiling all this evidence into a PDF document. It became a detailed report spanning over 100 pages. Facts, dates, amounts. Everything was clearly recorded with supporting evidence attached. This isn't revenge, she said, pausing her typing and taking a deep breath. This is about revealing the truth and putting an end to this toxic relationship. The report clearly outlined the following facts: the misuse of her parents' retirement funds, Austin's gambling addiction, her parents' criminal actions, the long history of emotional abuse she had endured. At the same time, it was a path to her own liberation. Taking a deep breath, she went ahead and posted her story on social media. The initial reaction was quiet. 100 likes in the first few hours. Gradually, comments of empathy began pouring in. I've had a similar experience. My parents covered my brother's debts repeatedly and forced me to contribute to the payments. It took me 20 years to free myself from the burden of family. I deeply respect your courage. Financial abuse from toxic parents. This is an issue society needs to confront. Jody, your story is giving hope to many victims. Within 24 hours, the post had been shared over 100,000 times, and major media outlets began covering the story. A Silicon Valley executive exposes financial fraud by her family crime in the digital age, from unauthorized access to embezzlement. A woman breaks her silence, a powerful accusation against her family. The public's reaction far exceeded Jody's expectations. The arrests were carried out early on Saturday morning. As expected, Jody received a flood of messages from her family, but she did not respond and ignored them all. Her father's former workplace, the insurance company, acted swiftly. An internal audit was launched immediately, uncovering years of embezzlement by her father. What started as small cash misappropriations eventually escalated to the theft of client insurance payouts. The total amount exceeded $500,000. At her mother's former workplace, an elementary school, an investigation also began. A review of PTA financial records revealed the misappropriation of approximately $80,000. Funds raised for school trips and educational materials had been diverted into personal accounts. The reputation of Jody's parents in the community collapsed overnight. That couple always looked so refined, but who would have thought? To cover up their son's gambling addiction, they went as far as committing crimes like this. Using money meant for education, unforgivable. Neighborhood gossip spread rapidly, making it nearly impossible for her parents to leave their home. The police investigation moved forward at an astonishing pace. The evidence Jody provided became a crucial lead for the case. Detectives from the Economic Crimes Division were impressed by her meticulous documentation. "I've never seen evidence organized so thoroughly," one detective remarked. "Your skills as a financial analyst are truly shining here." The investigation progressed simultaneously in three directions. First, there was the attempted unauthorized access to Jody's bank account. The cybercrime unit traced the IP address, confirming 27 unauthorized access attempts from her parents' home. Additionally, evidence was found on their computers showing they had collected Jody's personal information. Under the watchful eyes of their neighbors, Jody's parents quietly got into the police vehicle. Her mother was in tears while her father maintained a stoic expression. The investigation into Austin proceeded simultaneously. His massive debts from online gambling, dealings with illegal lenders, and receipt of illicit funds were all scrutinized. However, unlike his parents, Austin voluntarily turned himself in to the authorities and pledged his full cooperation. "I'm tired of running," he said through tears during his interrogation. "I almost ruined Jody's life. I want to make amends." The trial concluded swiftly. The evidence was so overwhelming that Jody's parents admitted to most of the charges. The verdict sentenced her father to 3 years in prison and her mother to 2 years. Additionally, they were ordered to repay the full amount of the embezzled funds. Austin received a suspended sentence on the condition that he participate in a rehabilitation program. He immediately entered a gambling addiction treatment facility. There he began rigorous rehabilitation. "I want to rebuild my life," he told his counselor upon admission. "I want to live honestly, like my sister." The impact on the local community was extensive. The insurance company promised to compensate all affected victims. The elementary school completely overhauled its PTA accounting system. This case became a turning point in raising awareness about economic abuse within families. Numerous media outlets reported on it as a microcosm of modern family dysfunction, exploitation under the guise of family, financial crimes in the digital age, and the importance of breaking the silence were central themes. Jody's courageous actions sent ripples through society. 5 years later, Jody had achieved even greater success as the vice president of a Silicon Valley startup. Her analytical skills and decisiveness shone even in critical situations. The experience of overcoming her family ordeal had become a strength in her business life. In any difficult situation, discern the truth and make the necessary decisions. This had become her guiding principle. Her experiences were compiled into a book titled The Choice of Truth, which became a bestseller. She also built new friendships. Her relationships with colleagues deepened, and she spent weekends attending yoga classes or hosting book clubs with them. For the first time, she experienced genuine human connections, friendships that demanded nothing in return, based purely on mutual respect, and most importantly, she felt free. Free from the burden of family. No longer did she have to meet anyone's expectations. She could make decisions about her life entirely on her own terms. At work, her experiences became a source of guidance for younger employees. Particularly for those struggling with family issues, she provided precise and empathetic advice. "Setting healthy boundaries isn't self-defense," she often explained. It's a form of self-respect. Sometimes, Jody wondered if her decisions had been the right ones, but each time, she reminded herself, this is the path I've chosen. It might not be perfect, but at the very least, it was her own choice, and that was what mattered most. One day Jody spoke at a seminar for young entrepreneurs. We are all the protagonists of our own lives. Sometimes we must reevaluate our relationships with the people we love the most. It may be a painful choice, but it is precisely that choice which leads us to true growth. The audience erupted into applause. Austin, after completing a 2-year rehabilitation program, had started a new life in a small town. A few months into the program, he called Jody. "Jody, I'm really sorry for everything." His voice sounded more genuine than ever before. "The program helped me realize how much my actions have hurt others. I finally understand, even about Mom and Dad. I'm so sorry." Jody quietly hung up the phone. She had learned that while forgiveness might be possible, forgetting was not. And sometimes, to love someone is to maintain a distance. Her parents had already served their sentences, and were now living a quiet, retired life. What they had done was not merely a family issue, but a societal crime. They too had begun to grasp the gravity of their actions. That evening, as Jody returned home, her phone buzzed with a new message from Austin. Summoning her courage, she decided to reply. It was a short message. "Take care." It wasn't forgiveness, nor was it understanding. It was simply a small step toward the possibility of a new relationship. Time can be a healer, but it doesn't happen automatically. It is the result of a conscious choice. Jody had finally come to understand that truth.